Hello, everybody. We are live and welcome to the latest episode of Duo Talk with myself, Matthew McAllister, and my co host,
Matthew Cochran.
We are delighted to get the show back up and running again. It's a new series, and we had a bit of downtime there over the winter, but now we're back, and we're really delighted to be joined by two friends of the show and friends of Gallery Guitar, and just wonderful all-round guys and great guitar players, Uros Baric. Hello, Uros.
Hello, hi.
Oh, hi,
Thanks so
and
much
hi.
for inviting me, and I'm so happy to be here.
We're
Yeah.
delighted to have you on. And hey, Vin.
How are you? Thanks for the
Yeah.
invite. Honored to be here.
Thanks very much for coming on. You guys have produced some absolutely beautiful albums, and they all sort of converged around the same time. It was sort of like, at the end of last year and at the very beginning of 2025, you both dropped these absolutely beautiful records. So we were delighted to get this chance to get you on the show and sort of delve into them and chat about the process, the concept, the production and everything, because you've created such all-round beautiful products. So to everybody watching at home and listening, welcome to you all. And of course, we have got two fabulous guys on here, and they know so much about guitar and so much about recording and producing these albums and coming up with these great concepts. So as you listen to the discussion, if you've got any questions or anything you want to throw their way, we will put it to them, and I'm sure they'll do their best to answer you. So as you're listening along, if you've got anything you want to ask, please do. We've got listeners already appearing. There's Ross in New York. We've had Jose on. We've got people from all over the world already tuning in. So there we go. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Matthew, and he will set up some information about our first recording that we're going to review this evening.
Well, yeah, so we have two great releases that we're really excited about. And we have a Vin Downes collection of original pieces, which is called City Lights Hide the Stars. Hi from me, Vin. And of course, Uros, we have your record Solitude, which features these really inventive, interesting arrangements of works by composers like Arnold's and Glass, Leonard Morgan, Richter. I think we should probably start off with something from one of these projects. So Uros, we're going to start with you. This is Uros' very special arrangement of a duo by Ludovico Einaudi. And it's really, really cool. So check this out. Wow. Wow.
Bravo.
Bravo. Yeah.
Wow,
So,
stuff.
Uros, talk a little bit about the sound that you're getting, because that is a prepared guitar, right?
Yes, exactly. That's a prepared guitar, and all there is to it is just I placed a really thin felt strip um, in between the strings on the saddle of the guitar. So the reason behind this is that the soundscape of Solitude and the original concept and idea of the album, a really big important part of it is felt piano. A lot of these pieces are composed for piano, and some of the composers featured on this album extensively use this technique for this kind of dreamy, otherworldly kind of quality of music that a layer of felt in between the hammers and the strings normally produces. And I wanted to check if it's possible to achieve something similar on a guitar. And initially, I took a few thin strips of felt and placed them in several different positions, even at the nut at first, but it was just too much dampening going on. But I found out if the felt strip is really thin and you just place it directly on the saddle of the guitar, it produces this really amazing kind of sound, especially when combined with the reverb of the space, or added in post as well. The effects is just beautiful, anyways. And this was the starting point for the album. And I actually have 2 tracks on the album using this effect. And it's Adieu that we just heard, and the other one is from Arnold's. It's called We Contain Multitudes. It's on 2 different guitars, but they both feature this effect, and I really liked it. And actually, it was really fun recorded this way.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? Are you hitting that melody quite hard then? Because with the reverb and the felt, it has like a percussive quality to it that's like stone dropping or something being very kind of like shattering or something. It's really effective. Does it change the attack?
It does, yeah, it does. But I would say I play even softer than usually with. Yeah, it's just that the mics are really close to the guitar for that intimate feeling that I wanted. Part of the reason, actually, what's interesting about this album is part of the reason that it took me 3 years to do it. It's not only because I did all the arrangements myself, but also I just wasn't happy with the sound. I had to re-record multiple tracks over and over again. And at first I started the standard route without any felt and with using, I don't know, 3 pairs of microphones. It was just sounding too big and it wasn't what I wanted. So I just kept re-recording until I found that magical moment of this felt. And I adapted the whole album concept to it, basically, to make it more similar. And actually, I played even softer when using the felt strip. But actually, there is a moment in Adieu where from total silence, it becomes really this huge sound. And this is the only time I actually used a mezzo forte kind of sound.
I see.
Yeah.
That was it's really fun. Both of these records, I think, are really fun listens on a hi-fi system, on on good speakers. And I've done it a couple of times, actually. And to me, I think both of these projects are because, and Matthew, I maybe you agree. We've been following your work, both of you, for quite some time, and these feel like very kind of mature artistic statements from both of you. Things that, like, you've been through the process enough at this point that you can start making choices that are unique to your own very specific artistic voice. And that's what I feel like we heard quite a bit, at least for me. And Uros, I think you have a very clear theme going on in your record, and Vin exactly the same thing. So Vin, can you tell us a little bit about some of your thinking when it comes to the production of this record, or what you were thinking as far as the theme? Did you re-record this your project 3 times over or whatever?
Well, if I was doing the recording myself, I'd still be recording the record.
Yeah,
I can't do any of that. I work with Tom Eaton, who's been working with Will Ackerman for 15 years or so, and for my money, he's probably the best in the business for acoustic sort of music that fall under the category of, for lack of a better term, new age music and ambient music. And he's so good at capturing the natural acoustics of an acoustic instrument. His focus is really to make, to really get the natural sound of the instrument itself. But for my theme was, with this record, I sort of, the idea of it kind of came out of COVID, because at the end of COVID, once I went back to school in person, I had made this decision. I'm going to go to school an hour and a half early every day and just develop the habit of writing every single day. And, by doing that, I was writing short pieces. And I really loved the challenge of writing short pieces. And then that kind of tied into my love of short stories, reading short stories, and some of my favorite authors. And like Raymond Carver is one of my favorite. And I was fascinated with how somebody could write a story in 3 or 4 pages. And he's more of a minimalist, and he's very sparse with language and words, but yet in 3 or 4 pages, even with the sparseness of the words, there's emotional weight to what he's writing, and you really get involved in the characters and the story in such a short amount of time. And I was fascinated to try to translate that to music. So all of these pieces were just short pieces that I wrote. They're all, I think the longest one might be 2.5 minutes. So I purposely wanted to write stuff that was between 1.5 minutes or 2.5 minutes tops, and see if I could really convey a complete idea and take a listener on a complete journey in a very short amount of time, and by playing less and writing less. So that's where this record sort of came from. And it's 16 short pieces. And, I wrote them first without an idea of how to program them. But after I went through, I probably had about 21, 22 pieces written. Then I kind of went through and found the 16 I think that worked best together to tell a story. And once I record all the tracks, then Tom and I will sit down and sort of think about the programming of the actual CD and what the order of the songs would be. I might have the idea of an opener, maybe a track for the middle of the record, and the landing point at the end. But together, we'll kind of find that sort of arc to make a natural feeling to the record, and tell a longer story with all those short pieces together, if that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. And so Tom is really like a very active part of it, not just as an engineer, but as a producer as well. And that dialogue.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is probably I think this is the 7th solo record that I've recorded with Tom, and we've done a couple other group projects as well. So 9 projects total. I have such trust in him as a musician, as a composer, as a performer, as an engineer, and as a producer that I can't imagine making music without Tom. So he is an active part of that. And, we really don't change much in the music, but his 2 cents to phrasing or dynamics, or sometimes maybe just changing a note, or a lot of the times it's subtraction with Tom. He's like, just get rid of that. Take those 2 notes out, or take those 3 notes out, or that 1 note. And it's amazing how a piece of music can be completely different by just subtracting 1 or 2 notes. So, I can't imagine, creating music without him. He's a vital part to what I'm doing. Yeah.
Well, let's hear some of the notes that you left in then, not and without the editing. So we're going to hear, I guess you would call this the title track from the album, because it is City Lights, Hide the Star. Yeah. Okay. So here we are, City Lights, Hide the Star. It's by Vin Downes.
gorgeous. Really, really
Bravo.
gorgeous.
Fantastic. So beautiful.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm.
I think when we were thinking about this, the topic of both of your records, and also reflecting on some of the influences that Matthew and I had when we were making ours, I got to bring up Windham Hill, and that remarkable run that William Ackerman and Ann Robinson had from I think it was late 70s into the 90s. I mean, that label was, at least for me, incredibly influential, and brought out some really important artists like Michael Hedges, and I mean the list goes on and on and on. Vin, you had mentioned that your producer has worked with Will Ackerman, right?
Yeah, that's how we met, because I guess in 2012 I was invited up to Windham Hill, to Imaginary Road Studios up in Vermont. That's Will's studio. Will had invited me up to meet and see if I could record with him and see if that would work out. And Tom was, I guess he'd been with him for a couple of years at that point. So that's when we first met. Yeah. And that I started working with Will. I recorded, I guess, that first record I recorded the summer of 2013, and then started, performing with Will and then touring with Will the following year in 2014.
Yeah. And so what about the influence of the label? I mean, like, for both of you, actually, did you find that those recordings from that era, did they speak to you in a way that influenced some of the decisions that you're making now?
Yeah, that was huge for me. And I was in high school, I think, and it completely rewired my brain. Because at that point I was playing heavy metal guitar and rock bands and stuff like that. And, I had tried playing with my fingers a little bit, but once I heard, Michael Hedges was the first one, and then Will's records and David Cullen and Alex DeGrassi. Yeah. Once I heard all of that, I just, kind of packed the electric guitar away and started playing fingerstyle, which led to me a couple of years later going to school to study classical. It was the natural bridge for me from playing a rock guitar, just an electric guitar, to going into classical music. So that was the bridge for me. Yeah. And it was enormous. And when I finally got a chance to work with Will, and performing with Will and touring with Will and just picking his brain all the time, I still tell him to this day that the first week I recorded with him and Tom in the studio, I learned more about playing music and communicating emotion through music than I did in all of my schooling years. It was just a masterclass working with Will and Tom, both of them. So that was enormous for me. Yeah, Windham Hill is still, it's huge for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We've got a cracking little bit of nostalgia and anecdote here from Phil. I think that Will Ackerman signed Michael Hedges to Windham Hill with a contract written on a paper napkin.
Very true.
Is it true? Yeah. Wow.
It is true. Yes, it is true. Yes.
That's amazing. You didn't want him to leave the bar, to leave the restaurant. You know what I mean? Had to get his signature on that napkin right away. That's
and just imagine, how Windham Hill was huge in the 70s and 80s through the early. Can you imagine today, like a record label of nothing but just instrumental music, like being successful? I couldn't even imagine that today.
I can imagine.
Well, we all. I'd like to imagine.
That's about all I can do, but I can imagine. Yeah.
Well, there's two of you here that are, Uros has been running a successful label now for quite some time, and Matthew, you've just jumped into that pool, and the boutique label, the sort of small independent label, is just like something that actually there is an environment for it to absolutely thrive now. And I think that the records that you guys have just both released is testament to that, because, if you just even jump back to one of the points that you were making earlier, Matthew, about both of you maybe having distinctively presented your voice musically in these two recordings, which is the thing that was really apparent to me. And listening to them, I was like, it seems to be very mature now. Vin, something of the improvisation style that you've got there, and Matthew asking you about the Windham Hill and that label, there's something when you tell the story about snatching time in between classes and stuff to write these little vignettes, these miniatures. It feels like you've just put them down. Like, did you? It doesn't seem to me like you did hundreds and hundreds of takes. You just kind of like that's it, and like you say, maybe subtract a note here or there in the arrangement, but they feel very fresh and alive.
Thanks. Yeah, and this record, this is the first recording I've done on classical nylon string guitar.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it's the guitar I play every day teaching in class. And I've done, when I was working with Will, those earlier records of mine are all steel string, and they're all in alternate tunings. I mean, I was working in 15 different tunings, and I've really reached the point. And then touring with Will Ackerman, who literally, if you go through his entire catalog, he might have 2 songs in the same tuning, and that's not an exaggeration. So, I'd be teching for him as well as playing. So I'd be backstage. I would have nightmares about tuning guitars. So eventually, I was just like, I can't tune guitars anymore. So I just went back to standard tuning, and I figured, well, let me play the guitar that's in my hands every day, all day long. So it was sort of like, I don't know, it was so fresh to like say, okay, well, I'm going to write on the classical guitar, and I'm going to really focus on composing better. And just with the alternate tuning, you're kind of going by feel and by sound all the time, and which is great because that was how I connected to playing emotionally. But now I wanted to kind of compose, and like you said, it all comes from improvisation for me. Like I'll sit down in the morning, as soon as I get to school, I'll just take the guitar out and noodle, and just kind of, if I, try to find a motif or a little melody or something. And as soon as I have that, then I'll open my journal and I'll start, composing. But it all comes from improvisation. But I think, and also trying to write the smaller pieces, there's no room to just kind of go on and, vamp on chords and just kind of get lost. It's got to be to the point. Like I have to make a statement, develop it a little bit, and get out in a minute or two. And that's been a challenge, and I think it's been a healthy challenge because I feel like I'm just improving a little bit writing, and that's all I want to do. I just want to get better at it,
Yeah.
That's it.
Uros, what about the narrative thread that goes through Solitude? Where did those ideas come from, and how did you approach the arrangement process?
Yeah, so I think coming out of COVID, this was my my idea all that time. So about 4 years ago, I started developing somewhat more concrete ideas of what I wanted to include. And first on my mind was an artist from Iceland that I've been following for over 10 years. So Olafur Arnalds. And I really wanted to include at least 2 or 3 pieces of him because I really respect what he does. And his music is actually a embodiment of what I wanted to say with this album. So that's where I started, and for that reason, it's actually the first tracks on the album itself. Then I started finding sort of music that fits the general vibe or feeling. As you'll discover with Solitude, it's actually music from different musical styles. It goes from minimal pulse music to minimal music as a branch of classical music, and it also goes into more crossover type and film music as well. So it's all these different styles, but they're all matched to have sort of the same feeling when you're listening to them. So because of the title Solitude, which I actually dreamt one night, I wanted all the pieces to invoke this sort of not, I wouldn't say sadness, but sort of a feeling of remoteness, something out there, or being by yourself, but also it has that feeling of intimacy, something that is close to your heart. And it's basically all pieces that are very dear to me, that I discovered recently or at the time when I started making the concept of the album. But definitely, I wanted to include Arnald's music, Philip Glass, which I'm a big fan of. Jan Tiersen is just one track there, the famous melody from the film Amélie. And we have a number of really recent tunes from Paul Leonard Morgan and Philip Glass from a TV series. And Einaudi, Ludovico Einaudi is an Italian musician I also really respect and follow for the longest time. I recorded 2 of his songs, and then I recorded the famous Euroma song, River Flows in You, and included some Max Richter tunes, as well as a really beautiful song, The Life of Death, from Ramon de Wilde.
It's beautiful. Well, I think it would be great to hear another track from the album now. And, you know, with this Icelandic music by Arnold's being something that's really tied it together, it would be great to hear one of those. So we're going to have a listen to tomorrow's song. And then maybe after we're finished with that, we can start to take some of the viewers' questions that are coming in. It's great that you're starting to post some questions and some comments there, because we're going to sort of take them now after we've heard a little bit of Uros's fantastic album, Solitude.
That's stunning.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The pacing's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And the Slovenian countryside in the background, the rolling hills, eh? It's almost like a tourist advert for Slovenia, you know. Don't go to Iceland, come to us. It's much more green. You know? So we had some comments there, which would be good to address. And you know, Vin, you talked quite a lot about the guitar that you chose to use on your record, because obviously it was the one that you use at work, and it was a nylon thing first. Uros, what is your guitar that you're playing, and is that the only guitar we hear on the record? And why is that your guitar? And maybe just some things about, it's Josie's question about, you know, how does one choose which guitar to use in recordings? But it would be nice to hear about you and your relationship with your instrument, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my main concert guitar for many years now. It's 2001 Michele della Giustina. It's a gorgeous guitar that I fell in love all the way in high school times, actually, still. So I've been using it for a really long time, and it's great, and it really fit Arnold's tunes great. But I felt like the whole album needed some variety in terms of instruments, so I actually used 4 different instruments. Michele della Giustina, the same master luthier, also built a brand new guitar for me very recently in 2023, which is a solid spruce top guitar, which is my favorite kind of guitar that has a lot of colors, and it's just gorgeous. And I use that one for quite a few tracks as well, maybe 4 or something like that. And I also used a brand new guitar from Cordoba Guitars, stage traditional, that I felt like fit the vibe of Paul Leonard Morgan's music a lot. The TV series that I mentioned earlier, I felt those tracks, they have a lot of space in between, and this stage traditional guitar is sort of a crossover guitar that is also amplified. So that also helps you prolong the sustain, and it was actually a great fit for those 4 tracks in between. And I think actually that's it. It's just three different guitars. I didn't use the 4th one.
When you're recording the nylon string electric guitar, are you recording straight into the console, or are you recording an amplifier? How do you deal with that?
Everything at once. So I set up 2 Schoeps microphones right in front of the guitar. The guitar is not designed to sound amazing right naturally, but it actually added a lot of richness to the sound. So alone, those 2 mics wouldn't have been enough. But I also used a jack cable into a DI box, and then from DI box I went into an amplifier, and at the same time into my console. So and then I used an additional microphone in front of that amplifier. So basically I had 2 tracks of just natural guitar sound, 1 track of mic mono in front of the amp, and then another mono track of just DI out of the guitar. So it's basically a lot to choose from.
Yeah, right. And so what we're hearing is an amalgam of those 4 tracks. Yeah.
Yeah, but what we just heard with Arnold's, for example, after re-recording multiple tracks, as I mentioned earlier, I actually went from 6 microphones to just 2 microphones placed very close to the instrument.
Okay. Yeah.
So that track was just 2 microphones in front of the guitar.
And we heard some birdsong, though.
Yeah, but that's actually recorded on location. And Matthew, you probably haven't been to our house.
Not the new studio,
but,
no.
Yeah, but this is actually recorded from the terrace of our house.
Okay.
And the natural sounds are actually recorded there, but with a simple Zoom recorder or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's very effective for the
to
video.
add some ambience.
Nice. So maybe come to you, Vin, and this is just an interesting question. Before we hear a little bit more of your beautiful music from your album, we had a question come in there, and it was from Kane. Yeah, here it is. And it's really interesting for the younger audience out there that are starting to think about what the heck to do. You guys are like pros here. You've matured into these wonderful concepts, beautiful albums, everything's coming together. But Kane has a good question. Where would you start with recording your first album? So if you can go back, all the mistakes that we've all made, to get to where we are, how do these young folks avoid them?
That's a good question. I don't even know if I have an answer for that, really. I mean, in my case, it comes down to finding somebody to work with who I could trust musically. Because if it were left to just me recording myself, I would still be recording my first album from 2009. I'd still be at it because, I hear so many flaws in my playing that I'm just, I need somebody to tell me, okay, stop. This is good enough. This sounds great. So get out of your head. And I need that, but I don't know. To start, I guess it just starts with a good batch of music first. I mean, I think that's the most important thing, right? I mean, whether you're doing, classical music or you're doing arrangements or your own music, it's about having music that's going to tell a story, that's going to communicate emotion to your listener. I think that's the most important place to start. It's the music itself. That's what I would say, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And also maybe like following on from that, just sort of, we live in an era now where you can record bits and pieces as you go and put things together over time. Like, Uros talking about, well, I re-recorded stuff, I sat on things for a few years. You're saying I'd still be doing it now if I didn't have someone to sort of, kind of manage the situation a bit and edit. Sometimes it's good to just get some music down, get some music recorded, whether it be on a Zoom recorder or just in some sort of, easy fashion, and then, get some feedback, get people to comment on it, get some sort of advice, and sort of, don't think that the process needs to be unveiled perfectly at the very end. Don't hold it back.
Right.
That's
and also for yourself to record something and then just get away from it for at least a couple weeks and then come back to it for fresh ears. Because I know for myself, I'm so overcritical, like neurotic overcritical of my own playing that, I mean, I could just sit and record a 1 minute video on my phone. If you go through my phone, there's like 107 takes. It's like, and then I go back and it's like the first one. It's like, oh well, what was wrong with that?
Yeah,
it's nice to always record yourself. And then I tell my students that all the time. Even when you're just practicing, record yourself, step away from it, and go back with fresh ears. And you can hear it almost as a listener would hear it, not as the actual performer would hear it, because those are two wildly different places.
Yeah, that's great advice. Uros, do you have anything on that topic? I'm sure, it's a question that's probably been asked of you a few times, I would think.
Anything specific, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. If you're starting out that first, how are you going to get that first album off the ground? Could even be more from the technical point of view, because Vin's talked a lot about the sort of how it feels and the philosophy of it, and sort of pulling the music together and sort of being led by that. But maybe like say you were sort of maybe in your early 20s and you were wanting to actually think about recording. How would you go about that first step?
I would also encourage everyone. So even if you are not thinking of recording as something that you'll do often, as a career choice, I think recording yourself has benefits on your playing more than anything else, and helps you develop the right path to a great tone production. And every album or every project that you do, even a small video or something like that, can have a great influence on your development of the sound that you're producing. An example for me of Solitude was I actually adapted my whole plucking technique because of this album. It's actually it sounds very different from Midnight or any other albums that I've done before, because of the couple of tracks that have this prepared guitar. I wanted to bring everything else closer to that soundscape, and I started developing a little bit of a different plucking technique, and that actually helped me get a new freshness into my playing, I believe. And so on the importance of recording yourself, I feel like we as guitarists or musicians often cannot really objectively hear ourselves while playing. You hear something different. People are always surprised when they hear themselves for the first time, or not even for the first time. It's just whole different experience from the third party perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe it's time for a little bit more music. What do we say?
Yeah.
Be lovely to hear some more from City Lights Hide the Stars, and this song is called First Morning. So could you tell us a little bit about it before we hear it, Vin?
Yeah, this is another one of those short pieces I wrote, and a lot of those short pieces that I started writing after COVID, I would add in, like I send out a monthly newsletter from my website. So one of the things I do every month is I write a short piece, usually an original piece, or something that I arrange, and I give out the free notation tabs every month. So this is one of those pieces I wrote. It was like a New Year's morning a couple of years ago. But again, short and sweet. Tried to be to the point, in and out within a couple minutes.
Beautiful. Well, here we are this morning, or first morning, sorry, by Vin.
Yeah.
Gorgeous stuff. Gorgeous stuff. There's like a when I heard that the first time, I thought there's like almost like an etude in there. Like, it begins and I'm like, that's actually really nice. Like you're controlling pull-offs, you're sort of moving up the fingerboard. I thought that's like almost like an etude. And it reminded me of something, and I'm sure you're going to take this as an absolute compliment, Vin, but there's a great etude called Oleander Etude by Ralph Towner, and it's sort of buried in one of his books. And I'm like I love this piece, and like the these little artifacts that you've written there, they're just like they reminded me of so much. And then that got me thinking about like your improvisation and these little things that you add here and there. And I just thought like it sounds that you have this like on Nylon Strung, I think like this sensitivity that reminds me a lot of Ralph, which is it's really beautiful, gorgeous music.
One of my favorite players. I appreciate that. I probably subconsciously stole that then.
yeah. That's like the subconscious stealing happens all the time. I don't think it's stealing. I think it's
borrowing. It's borrowing. Yes.
Or inspired by. Like,
yes.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Great. So we were just chatting there. We've got a little chat going on the side for all the people viewing. I must just say that we've got our regular viewers on Gallery of Guitar, and it goes out on Facebook as well. But we've got for the first time the video going out on Instagram, and I'm looking over at Instagram, and the amount of people that have joined is absolutely incredible. We're not necessarily able to see some of the comments and questions that people post there just as quickly as we do in others, so I'm keeping a little eye on it. And there are already a couple of things that are really beautiful that I wanted just to sort of mention. But one of them is about your videos, Vin. How are you getting these ideas for first City Lights, Hide the Star, and all those cityscapes, and then of course this beautiful First Morning? How are you putting these videos together as well?
Well, I really have this. I'd love to be able to write like film scores, or not film scores, but just incidental music for video. I'd love to be able, I don't know how to do that, but it's something I'd love to do. So this is sort of like reverse score writing, maybe. I don't know. I just go and I get stock footage that I think would really, capture the emotion or the meaning or the story of the song. And I just love it as a creative, hobby. It's just fun to really, go through hundreds, sometimes more than that, videos, little snippet videos, but to find some that'll help tell the story of the song, and then just edit them together, and it's just like a hobby kind of thing, but it's been a lot of fun. It's, it's reverse engineering, I think, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely works. It definitely works. The images that you've chosen work really well, and they also there was a lot of nice movement. Like, so when your bass line started to move and things just started to develop, your images would really sort of complement that. I thought so. It was really nice.
I'm glad that comes across. I'm trying to do those things, which is so that's cool.
Right.
I appreciate that. And plus, I don't want to see myself in a video, so
We've got some people already, Phil. There's Phil just saying he subscribed to your newsletter, Vin. And there was a question earlier on about, what was it, Matthew? Was it arrangements?
Where to find the arrangements and the original pieces, and we've got quite a few viewers who are looking to get their hands on your music, gentlemen. So give us an idea about where to pick this up.
Uros, you can go first.
Okay. Yeah, I actually notated all these arrangements on time with the release, and all the 15 are available actually via musicnotes.com. Obviously, all these scores are copyright protected, so I can just publish them on my own, and even the prices are set by Music Notes. The best way to find all of them at once is just to go to my personal website, urosbaric.com/solitude. And there you'll see first a list of all tracks, and then all the arrangements as well, with direct links. And if you're planning to purchase multiple arrangements, because they're all single downloads, just contact me first, and I'll give you a little discount code.
Nice.
Great.
How about you, Ben?
Yeah, where do we grab yours?
On my website, I have probably about 80 notations available. I've tried to get through all of the albums, and now I'm smart. I'm a little bit smart. The last few albums, I actually started notating before I recorded them. So number one, I could remember how to play the music, and number two, it'd be ready for sale. But yeah, I have about 80 tabs, and then I also have some arrangements I've done. They're available as well. People could buy the notation tabs either by album, like in a complete album's worth, or individual tabs or notations and tabs. And then also I do bundles where you can get all of them for a discounted price. And then also I recently made, there's a page within my website where you can go to all of my newsletters for the last, I started that right after COVID, so maybe 2022. So there's a few years of newsletters on there, and each newsletter has a free tab in it, notation tab. And usually there's a video of me playing whatever the piece is for that month. So everything's available on vindownes.com.
I can attest to the fact that Vin's music in the newsletter is absolutely brilliant. Vin, on Sunday, just next door here in Gallery Guitar in my studio, I was teaching one of your pieces. I'm sure Sam's listening, actually. Great guitar player over here in Belfast, an enthusiast, works on quite a lot of your music, and we were
Sam?
Yeah. We were changing. I'm sorry, I was changing fingering. I was like putting stuff in wacky positions. We were doing all sorts of crazy things, and I was trying to wonder, like, would you like this or wouldn't you like this? But I'm sure you're going to find little recordings of your tunes appearing. I mean, they're so accessible, like you say, in their length, their duration, and the fact that you make both of you make these things available for people to have a go. That's just such a fantastic thing. So for everybody watching, probably a lot of you know who Uros and Vin already are, but I will put links to their websites, of course, in the description of this duo talk. And it usually takes about a day for these live streams to permeate through YouTube and all that sort of stuff. But in the next day or so, you'll see lots of links going up there so that you can all follow on from the beautiful music that you've heard today. I might just go over to Instagram and read out a comment, because I think it's really important to mark this.
Before you do that, I just want to give just a shout out to Sam, because he just sent me a quartet that I'm going to use with my kids in school. So yeah, and I'm trying to set him up with a publisher that I use here.
There he is. So, he's in the chat.
There you are, Sam.
All right.
Excellent.
Love your work, Sam.
Excellent. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And just sort of nipping over to Instagram there, because this is the first time we've ever visited the world of Insta. Kim Perlack, another guitarist from the States, there.
Hey,
so
Kim.
yeah. And what's Kim saying? She's saying loves the points on self-recording, listening, and technique development, and writing at regular intervals, which obviously, Vin really is taken to another level in between classes, and beautiful playing and photography. And I just thank you. And Kim's also mentioned there, it would be interesting to know how technique changed. And I've got a feeling that might have been a little bit more for Uros to elaborate on when you talked about wanting the sound to match those felt prepared guitars and what it did. And you were sort of, you sort of showed us a little bit your right hand. And I was kind of thinking, was it more like a lutenist then? Was it a softer attack? Was it less nail? What was it? Maybe just a little bit of information there for Kim, specifically on how the technique changed on this album.
Okay, no problem. I will try to explain. I will do my best. So, you know how we are normally taught to use the entire finger when we go plug the string. And that's great, and it gives you a fat and really really rich and good sound on your guitar. But for this recording, I wanted something opposite of that, something more intimate and fragile even. So I took one really good advice that I got all the way back in my university days in Vienna. My counterpoint teacher, a fantastic lute player, Luciano Contini, showed me this really good technique that he called super legato. It's basically just a normal stroke, a normal free stroke, but you do it in a way where your final knuckle is really, really is almost like loose. It's without any sort of it's not firm at all. So this part of the finger is still the same, right? But this is really, really loose and super soft. Mm-hmm. So when you plug the string, your finger goes like this, but then this tip of the finger actually bends a little. And if you do this kind of technique, and actually I found that quite a few lute players do this, mm-hmm. it actually enables you to do a really, really a nice legato, more so than the standard pluck. And I actually started experimenting with this, and it fit perfectly for Solitude, for this kind of more intimate, fragile kind of sound.
I had so many questions about how the sound was produced, because Uros, it is a very, very different record. It's a very different sounding record than your previous work, and so it's great to get some insights as to there are things that you're doing with your fingers, and there are things that you're doing with microphones, there are things that you are doing with the instruments, all of which really have a remarkable effect on the overall on the overall project.
Mm-hmm.
Also, super legato just sounds cool.
And super legato. Now we have that in our life. Yeah.
But I guess like in very technical terms, it's like a collapsation of the tip joint. Like, so it's like
exactly.
a rest stroke,
exactly.
Actually. It's actually like a very, very non-resisted rest stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of like, very effective. It's very interesting. We all want to see that up close now. We're totally nerding out, like, a bunch of complete guitarists, What about this question from Jose? And this can be for either of you, and, really to pitch in on this, because obviously it's probably come about because of prepared guitar, but it's an interesting thing, using gut strings. Jose, he's talking about, how about using gut or synthetic gut strings in recordings to get another old world sound? Anybody want to pitch in on that?
I mean, I have some experience with this. I used gut strings and synthetic gut as well. And it was a perfect fit for my Karuli albums, which were recorded with the original, 200-year-old guitar from France. And it was the perfect sound for that. I didn't specifically try Nile gut strings for this project, for Solitude, but I did sort of gravitate towards the earlier formula of nylon string design from Augustine strings, because the more modern, more powerful strings were just not the best fit for me. So you're completely right. So this direction of going back into in history, it's actually also something that brings the soundscape from something modern to something more tender or intimate. So that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a bit like sometimes even on contemporary violins, people will use Baroque bows, or they'll use older bows. So, and things like that. So, or for example, you'll use a head joint, which is wooden, instead of, for example, a whole metal instrument, if it's, brass and things like that. There's ways of mellowing out and going back a little bit with the sound from this kind of brilliant contemporary modern aesthetic that we sometimes have, which you think of carbon strings and all those kind of things, they really do change the entire feeling sometimes of your playing, not just the sound. They provoke you to play a certain way, There's a question come in for Vin, and it's specifically about your writing, Vin, and it is from Kim over on Instagram, and it's: when you compose at regular intervals, do you self-limit in timed sessions?
Well, I typically write in the morning for about 90 minutes when I'm in school before any of the kids get there. So I sort of, I make it a point of trying to write something. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be something I'm going to use, but I have to write something. And again, it starts with improvisation. So I that's my time period every day, and I try to stick to that every single day. And since I started doing that, it seems like I've been a lot more productive, writing a lot more, because it's coming easier to me, where before I would kind of sit around and wait to be inspired, wait for the music to come to me, which doesn't really work. If I'd be waiting around for 6 months for something to pop in, but doing it every single day, it's sort of, you're working that muscle, and that seems to help a lot. I mean, I would recommend that to anybody who's writing their own music. Just make a habit of it every day, whether it's 15 minutes or it's 2 hours, whatever it is. If you do it every single day, I think that sort of opens that door to the muse, and it comes a little bit more readily to you.
Yeah. One of the things that you both do that we've kind of addressed already, but I don't know that we've highlighted how special and unique it actually is you have this whole concept, not only behind the record, but also you've thought about sharing every aspect of it to your listeners and to people who could play the music. So you're thinking about the pieces that you're writing, but you're also thinking about other people playing this music. You're thinking about other people approaching the scores, and you've got this entire statement that is that's out and ready to go. Is that part of the plan from the get, or does this morph as you are developing the ideas?
For me, writing for me is the most important part. Is I'm writing for myself. So when I sit down and write something, I'm listener number one. So that's my main focus. But after that's done, I love putting it out there. And like, if you look at my notations, there's no dynamics written in, because I encourage people, here's the piece, make it your piece now, make it your piece of music, interpret it however you hear it. It's going to be different from how I hear it. And I encourage people to do that. So I love that aspect, that people might want to play the music. That's great. That's really great. Because I think as a composer, you really want people to really do deep listening to your music. You want them to be really active listeners, and not just find your music on. I made a joke last week online that I found my music on a playlist for pigs. I'll say that again. I found my music on a playlist for pigs. So apparently I'm making your bacon less stressed or something. I'm not sure, but I mean, that's great. And when people, whoever listens to your music, that's wonderful. But when somebody wants to really get into the composition and perform it and play it, I mean, how could you not love that? I mean, that's, so grateful for that anytime that happens.
It was a bacon improvisers class, wasn't it? It was,
that's right.
With pork.
Next time you have bacon, think of me.
Okay. And Uros, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, for me, it's actually very similar. For me, it just brings me joy to kind of be able to share my music, or at least my arrangements, sort of my thinking about that music with other players. And I'm always so happy to hear when somebody is working on one of the things that that I kind of started or had it in my hands for a while. Yeah.
I think Randall has won the emoji award tonight. Absolutely. Just quickly before we move on, just to address Phil in the chat, is super legato the same thing as top stroke Segovia, Bremen, Mills talked about? And yeah, pretty much it is, Phil, as far as I would be concerned. And that's probably from a slightly, apart from Segovia, from a slightly English guitar school, you know, John Mills, Julian Bream, and of course then Segovia, but that flexibility of the tip joint, going back to what Uros was saying. And I think that a lot of these techniques are fantastic and they're absolutely amazing, as we heard Uros actually display on the record. But sometimes when you're first starting out and you're learning, these are very sensitive and very difficult techniques to get a handle on. And if in some ways, sometimes as a teacher, I would say if you're looking to implement those too early on, before you've got a really good rest stroke and a really good free stroke, that collapsation can kind of get in the way of developing a normal right hand technique, normal for want of a better word, because everyone's right hand technique is of course unique to them. But these are not maybe extended techniques, but maybe in a way we should sort of think of them like extended techniques would be on other instruments, you know, because they really are specifically designed to create particular sounds. But yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. I'm happy if anyone wants to jump in there and correct me or take that point in a different way. But I'm always scared when students see someone doing something absolutely awesome that's really unorthodox and cool, and they're like, "This is the way, I'm going to do this now." And I'm like, "Could we take care of a few other things just first before you do that?" And then they're away off, you know. So I love the idea for sure. So just having a look back in the chat, we had a lovely comment which leads us to another album. We're going to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion, gentlemen. Obviously, myself and Matthew, we released Pale Blue Dot at the end of last year, just before I think both your records came out. So these three records with really quite strong concepts have all arrived on the scene in the last few months, really. And our concept all been around sort of space and time, with Matthew's really epic duo, Pale Blue Dot, after Carl Sagan's fantastic, book. So the album's been out now for a while, and we're going to share a track from it. And sort of following on from your beautiful idea of putting images, Vin, with the music, we played this live in Glasgow, as you'll see the comment come up on the screen there. McAllister and Cochran, I loved your Pale Blue Dot concert in Glasgow. So we did this in November in the Stevenson Hall, the main concert hall of the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, as part of our big guitar weekend. We have a sort of big festival. And we did it pretty much with us hopefully not being the main focus of the night, I guess, you could say. Is that fair, Matthew? Where we weren't totally... we're center stage, but we weren't as lit up as we normally would be.
Yeah, and this was an outgrowth of a concert that we did at a planetarium that was put together by our friend Stephen Mattingly, and that was Stephen's idea, and boy, it was just such a cool night. And so we came out of that experience thinking, God, we need to absolutely do more of this. And so this was then you taking on all of the sort of visual. You said, "Oh, you sit back. You wrote this stuff. Let me come up with the."
I felt like I need to do some heavy lifting somewhere in this process. You know?
There was plenty of that happening, but this was really special. So yeah, I actually not only wasn't the focus, but took the back seat to all of the production aspect of it too, and it was just so much fun to play with all this stuff in the background.
Yeah, so some people obviously watching were there and in person, but what we did was we played the album from start to finish in basically its order on the album. So it was like a live performance of the album. But the Pale Blue Dot piece was with there's a really giant screen in the hall, so we got the lights as low in the hall as we possibly could, and both read essentially off iPads, so you could get some light on the screen, but everything was really dark. And then on the screen behind, for all of Pale Blue Dot and all of Interstellar, the Hans Zimmer track, we had images which were from James Webb and Hubble, and then other of the artists, we know when they're going to do a mission to Mars or a mission to Jupiter or flybys and stuff like that, they also come up with essentially artists' impressions of what they will eventually see when they get there. So it was an amalgam of all of this different, freely available, because NASA makes so much imagery freely available, nebulas, galaxies, all this kind of stuff. And I probably did a bit like what Vin did, you know, I overlapped, and I thought, okay, we're starting to do something kind of more, let's say, I don't know, quick here, or we're changing, you know, key or whatever's happening. How can these things develop? And then we played with all of that live. So we were sort of playing to we had to rehearse it for a couple of days actually in Glasgow when you arrived. You know, we had to sit and we had it on a screen, you know, where we were staying. We had these digs and we had like a big TV screen, and we were sitting in front of this TV screen going, no, that doesn't work there. That asteroid hasn't crashed into that planet yet. You know, you need to stop that, slow that down. Like, you know, so it was like probably really wacky for anybody watching from the windows opposite, like us, like, you know, sort of like playing to the TV for 2 days. But we had some great help in the hall. We got a great tech guy, Matt, who also is in the artistic planning, Matt Adam, and he's a guitarist as well. So he's like a brother, you know, in it. And he was like, right, I'll help make sure this doesn't fall apart. So he did a great job, and we did it. So we'll share a track from that, and it starts completely in darkness and ends in darkness. So when I start playing it, if you think something's gone wrong, hopefully it hasn't, and it's supposed to be like that. But this is what is this? This is your third movement, isn't it? By that
That's
point,
right.
oh, yeah, third movement of Pale Blue Dot, Sacred Black.
Sacred Black.
Yeah, maybe say something about the movement before I play it, so that people kind of know what they're hearing and looking at, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Within this, the structure of the suite, this is very much the sort of like the soul of the music, and it's a reaction to just a title heading from the Carl Sagan book, just about the quietness of space. I mean, true quietness of space, and it comes after probably the sort of more loud, bombastic stuff, and before other loud and bombastic stuff. So this is very much like the when things settle in the suite. I think it's my favorite moment.
It's mine too, for sure, for sure. There we go. Cheers. Ah, cool. I'm going to fade into black.
Absolutely beautiful.
Properly fade into black, you know, like. Nice, good. So, we've kind of getting ourselves towards the end of the evening, I'm guessing. I'm just checking over on Instagram. Quite a lot of people have joined us. Some lovely comments over there as well. Thank you everybody for listening over on Instagram and making some lovely comments. And thank you for all the people there over on YouTube as well with lovely comments too. So, I guess without further ado, really, Matthew, it's over to you to take us out to close the show.
Well, thank you so much, Uros. Thank you so much, Vin, for being a part of the conversation. Thank you to all of you for being a part of the conversation. We'll stay with the comments in YouTube and on Instagram, etc. Throughout the week. And so let's keep the conversation going. We love that that's an aspect of this show. You can stream all of today's records mostly on the streaming platform of your choice. It's definitely worth looking around. CDs and vinyl copies of Pale Blue Dot are now available at Sacred Black Records. That is sacredblackrecords.org. Matthew and I are on the road this summer. We'll be in northern Michigan for several performances between June 6th and 11th. In Grand Rapids on June 13th. We'll be performing, judging, and teaching at the Guitar Foundation of America June 16th through 22nd. That's in Louisville, Kentucky. Then we'll be at the Classical Guitar Retreat for the second year at the historic University of St. Andrews in Scotland. That's July 8th through 13th. And on August 8th, we'll perform a midnight concert of the music from Pale Blue Dot alongside all of these gorgeous images that you just saw at the Nördlingen Guitar Festival in Germany. So join us for all of that. Thank you for everybody who's watching today. Thank you, Matthew, for hosting. Thank you, Uros and Vin, for being a part of it.
Yeah, thank you all very much. We'll see you all next time for sure.
Thank you so much.
Bye for now.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Talk soon.